Hi everyone, thanks for joining. As previously mentioned, we're having some technical difficulties today, so just please bear with us. You'd think in today's day and age we'd have some decent internet, but oh well. So today's webinar is around ITSM and around starters, levers and movers. We've got Damien, who's going to be running the ITSM webinar for us. Due to the technical issues, we won't be able to deliver a demo today, but what we are going to do is record that demo for you and send it in the follow-up information as well. If you have any questions, please message them into the message box. And also, we'll try and answer any questions that you have at the end when we have a question and answer time. If you have anything else or have any technical issues, just let us know and we'll try to sort it out. So without further ado, then I'll pass across to Damien.
Literally being passed across. We're sharing headsets, so thank you very much, Catherine, for that. Right, okay, so yeah, so the title of this today is ITSM Debunked, Starters and Levers and Movers. Starters and levers and movers is a question that I'm always asked on every single ITSM engagement that we do, and it is incredibly important to the services that are represented, whether they are from public sector, from private sector, it doesn't matter. So hopefully some of this will come through, and strategies can be, that would be really a key takeaway for me today. So a little bit about myself, apologies for the hideous photograph there on there. My name's Damien Shield. I've been with Power on Platforms now for roughly 4 months. I've been roughly 3 years in consulting. I've had a background from public sector, and also that worked my way up from a computer workshop to learn my trade, and then worked through into public sector, so say for about 15 years now. I grew up and cut my teeth on operations manager, so the enterprise monitoring, looking after a massive heterogeneous environment for a local authority, and then really branched into service management, particularly using Service Manager and Orchestrator for different tasks across that. So what we're going to be covering today is, as I say, this is the agenda, which hopefully you'll see on your screens within about 10 to 15 seconds. We're going to have, we do have quite a nice lag here as well, so I am only talking to you from Peterborough. I'm not on the other side of the world, though due to the internet today it doesn't feel like that. So so what we're going to do is we're going to quickly look over System Center at a very, very high level, as it's as I'm sure a lot of you have already had any dealings with it. It's a big, massive suite of products which work together as a solution rather than individual offerings. We'll look at the idea then, quickly moving on and specializing into the idea of automation, so, and then moving between repetition and automation, so, you know, identifying those key tasks which we can take out, and any of the key takeaways for which are particularly good candidates. We then look at specifically starters, because starters is always the big process that causes the most headache, and can be very, very broad in its breadth of activities that it can spark and require. So we'll be looking at sort of a high level approach to that, and then actually drill down into what some of those tasks can actually entail as well. So, but these are obviously going to be different for every single environment, because every single company, every single organization has its own agenda and its own requirements and its own set of user requirements and business requirements, and the trick is obviously to get those all working together. Number 5 would have been a demo. Unfortunately, due to our internet signal, unfortunately, I can't actually connect reliably back to our servers to do the demo environment. So, as Catherine pertained earlier, what we're going to do is we're going to actually record that session, and as in the words of many a great TV chef and performer, it would be one I prepared earlier, but I will have done that in advance. so sort of reverse TV chefing there. And then we'll open up the floor to any questions and answers if our internet allows that, and hopefully that will then bring us to a close. The screen that you'll see in a second is just to give you a brief background on Power and Platforms. So we've been now we're at the end of our third financial year, coming into our fourth operating year. Like a stone gathering rolling moss, as it were, a rolling stone gathering moss. That's the euphemism. We're just getting stronger and stronger and stronger, and as we say, we've literally written the book on System Center. We're currently in the process of updating it to now 2016 on a couple of fronts. We are IT management cloud automation specialists, and one of the things that specifically attracted myself to the Power-on's methodology was the fact that when we deploy, it's not button clicking. You're not paying for us to come and button click, which is, for myself as a consultant, 100% refreshing. The time is then spent on that knowledge transfer, which is, to be quite honest, is always the most rewarding part. Right, okay, enough of how brilliant we are. Integrated ITSM. So IT service management, I probably don't need to roll that out to you guys, otherwise you wouldn't be sitting here on this call. System Center is the other side of managing our server estate. So Windows Server in whatever guise, 2012 R2, 2016, is getting more and more easy to manage, and System Center does that at scale. So have your management tool sitting on your individual server, which is absolutely fine for purpose. If you need to do that in scale across your enterprise, that's where the System Center stack sits in. And so, as you can probably see, hopefully now on the slide, we have service management that sits in the center of it. So System Center Service Manager sits in the middle of that, and that was actually my first exposure to Service Manager. Was not actually as an IT service desk product. It was more actually as a data warehouse that sucked in the data from all the different sources. So in that case, we had Virtual Machine Manager, we had Active Directory, we had Configuration Manager, and then Operations Manager. So let me talk you through a couple of those. So Configuration Manager, or SCCM, is probably the most mature of the products in the stack, and then that allows you to update, keep your client estate primarily patched up to date, throw out applications to it, deploy operating systems from bare metal, and generally look after the life cycle of your client machines, and also your server estate as well. So Virtual Machine Manager is effectively your hypervisor, so and management tool. So all your virtual machines will be managed, and specifically the hosts. And again, that's heterogeneous, so they can go across Hyper-V, VMware, and even Citrix hypervisors as well. So then we have Orchestrator and Service SMA, so Service Management Automation. So SMA is the precursor to what is now Azure Automation as well. So SMA is the on-premise version of that. So a lot of you might have heard about Azure Automation, but it all started with Orchestrator, which is personally my favorite product of the whole stack. They often refer to it as the glue in the System Center stack, and it binds all the other components together. Effectively, it's like BizTalk. It provides a connection between unconnectable or unconnected systems, and those connectors can be scripts, they can be registry queries, they could be WMI queries, it can be whatever you like, any way you define it, with a whole, each vendor, so VMware still inject their own activities into there, and so that gives all that lovely synchronization between all the different vendors which were previously unconnected. Operations Manager, as I say, when I cut my teeth on growing up as a server engineer, allows you to monitor and manage your server, primarily server estate. Again, it's Microsoft have woken up over the last few years and realized it wasn't just Microsoft stuff in the data center, and as of that, we now have a product that is able to easily manage any workloads, whether they are on Linux, Unix, or Wintel, i.e. Windows machines, and network devices as well. It's just getting stronger and stronger and stronger. And in the 2016 release, we're seeing a much more polished and refined product that is just making the management experience easier and also much more beneficial to both the ITs and the business as well in the provision of business information. And then we have DPM, data protection and recovery. So I've always, even though not a massively strong point on mine because it's its own speciality, I've always used it and seen it as a recovery tool rather than a backup solution, which is always much more important. To be able to recover your data is actually the whole point of a backup exercise, and that's where its focus is. So right, so if we click on to today, so in a couple of seconds, hopefully you should see a screen saying ITIL Alignment or ITIL. So this is from my neck of the woods. This is Government of OGC, the Government of Government Commerce. These are the publishing house for ITIL, or ITIL, depending on how you'd like to pronounce it. And these are a set of libraries, these are a set of guidelines that are simply provided as to provide a framework in which to base our IT service offerings on. I would like to stress the fact that ITIL is a framework, and in that fact that you can pick and choose which modules that you do wish to implement and ones that that you feel that aren't necessarily representative to your business. So where Service Manager actually sits in is the whole idea that it pulls into your environment, and it allows you to provide incident management, service management, problem management, change management out of the box, which is, you know, absolutely stonking for a product. What you do need to do is invest some time, love, and care into it to get the most out of it. I've often come into environments where there is a bespoke product which is in place, to mention a few, and so like ServiceNow or HP Service Manager, and they're absolutely fine. They're great for what they do, but I've always considered them as point solutions. So they do one particular job very well, but to actually move outside of their original purpose and to maybe adapt it to the customer's needs and the enterprise, you know, exact requirements, it's very difficult to move out of that. Service Manager is designed to be extended, and that's the most beautiful thing about it, is that it's designed to be intended. So I hear a lot of organizations come and say, well, you know, I want it out of the box. We don't want to do any development into it. Well, Service Manager is designed to do that, and if you follow the guidelines and go with the best practices which have been laid out now for the last 5 or 6 years, there's a huge investment from the community in, you know, good ways to use the product, then it will be a very rich and beneficial experience. So it doesn't Service Manager and Orchestrator are like any other product. They work very well with additional add-ons. There are a couple of major players, Provence, ITNetX, and Syrison, all provide very good additional products to the suite that allow additional functionality and easier management of the solution. So right, okay, so that's the product stack. That's what we potentially use. So if we now move on to the important thing, which is about the process. Whenever I've started a process gig, the first thing I do is potentially spend 2 to 3 days not actually talking about Service Manager, because it's about process. You've got to get process right. I don't want anyone to think that if they get Service Manager in, it's going to solve their processes. It doesn't work that way. You have to work the process out and have a clear definition, and once we have that in place, then we can transition and map that to the Service Manager and Orchestrator functionality. So we've got this idea of repetition and automation. So, well, why would, or what can we automate? Well, any particular manual task that you've got a clear process for that is repeatable can be automated. And so from that, what we drive is that it removes the element of human error, and so therefore it removes the mistakes, so it removes the rework, so it increases the productivity. It allows the staff previously hung up on having to do those manual repetition, repeatable tasks, allows them to do what they're probably paid for to do, and so it frees them up. Never ever want to get into the sort of Luddite mentality when, you know, let's go smash the looms, because what it's doing is that it's allowing and freeing up the employee's time to do all the tasks that, and such, we're all being asked to do more with less time and less resources. So automation is key to that. And also, if we can show that a process is automated and it's verifiable as well, so from end to end we can track it and audit it, which are all out of the box functionality from most of the System Center suite, and specifically Orchestrator. When we're driving this automation, we can actually not just show compliance, we can actually prove that we are complying as well. So in that case, oh, I'm clicking the wrong screen here. Right, okay, so what challenges do we have in the system? Well, lots. It's all about perspective as well. Traditionally, the IT department looks at it very differently from the business. And we're all probably aware that in any business, be it public sector, be it private sector, whatever, an employee's journey with that company starts and stops with their pay packet, which normally sits with HR and finance, which is normally some Oracle-based solution or other solution if you're a smaller SME in that respect. But our IT department, AD is our vision of the world, and so it's the challenges then is to actually start getting that integrated to us. We've also got when we're creating users, say for example, I'm going to center on new starters because that's the big journey. Once we've started new users out and mapped that process from start to finish, movers becomes then much more visible from a procedural point of view, and then leavers is very much then just a reversal of the new starter process. So if we look at, say, new starters, we get someone into the IT help desk, we go and create, all right, okay, well, which user do I go into, what groups do they need? Oh, I don't know. Okay, well, they need to be like John Smith in accounting. All right, okay, and then you give them that access, and they've actually got access to stuff that's not required, and you know, you've got all of that issues, or one person will name a username, sort of like first name dot last name, and then the next person who comes along might do it in a different way. So there are quite a lot of ways to be able to get around this with your soft process, but the driving train, the driving way to do that is to make each of those processes repeatable. And so hopefully by identifying those key processes, such as new starters, and getting that process defined, and then mapping that out to a repeatable script, which I'm sure a lot of you had already got within your IT teams for certain things. To get that into your service desk product is really where we all want to get to. So I'm just going to go through here on. So we've got. Hopefully, you should be seeing a screen called Streamlining Processes in front of you. So we've got the HR process. So that will be generally coming right from when the job post is advertised. And so HR will know about that job process right from the start. Normally, then by the time it's got to the IT team, if there isn't proper communication between all of the teams, John Smith is already on site and he's sitting there getting paid by HR, and he hasn't got an account to be able to log on to, because this is the first thing IT knows about it. And what happens is that the service request for a new user is then rushed through as quickly as possible, and that's when mistakes starting to happen. So what we can, as I've said before, we need to think about that overall business process and actually get IT and get all the start and stopping of those processes, bringing them together, and so instead of IT to be just one part of that process, is to actually start coordinating all of those activities together. Right, so hopefully you should see another one on there called Streamlining Processes and Starters on there. I'm just going to flick through those slides. So we should see each of the 4 silos that we have. So IT, HR, business support, and finance process. We have each of those different departments will have their own procedures and vision of that user. So what we want to do is provide one version of the truth, and there will be certain things that map across. So their names, for a start, their department, the location, the manager, and IT and HR are normally relatively well aligned, hopefully. Then business support will also then need additional elements from there, and then also finance will for equipment that's being requested, etc., etc. So let's all go. This is all fine. Without automation, as we've said, what happens is those processes happen as isolated instances, and this is where the miscommunication comes from. So what we need to do is we can provide with Service Manager a single service request or multiple ones, depending on how complex we want a new starter to be, which I'll come on to in a second. We can provide a single repository for the individual that would be potentially starting the process off. So yes, we've got to touch the HR database. Yes, we've got to potentially touch the business support teams. Yes, we need to talk to finance because we need to requisition, and then we also need to speak to IT because we need to get their AD account up. We need to get the line of business applications sorted. We need to get their network logins sorted. We need to get VPNs. We need to get all that sort of things together. So the way, by using Service Manager and Orchestrator, which will be doing all the actual automated bit of it, which is ironically almost the easiest bit, we can use that one place to request and get your HR department or whatever department is responsible for onboarding that user into the organization as such, and it coordinates each of those activities. So we can use the self-service request form to do that, which is the self-service portal, which unfortunately I can't show you at the moment due to the technical difficulties. But a lot of the times when I've gone into environments where we talk about new starters, it's not just creating an AD account. What it is, it's much more than that, because HR, as I say whether you're using SAP or whatever for your HR representation of the organization. So new starter, so what does that actually entail? So this Active Directory account creation. So yeah, so essentially, ironically then, when people stress about the complexity of that, that's actually one of the easiest ways to do it. So and Orchestrator is brilliant for that. So whatever we can't accomplish using the pre-built functionality in Orchestrator, we can hook a PowerShell script into it. We can grab. We need to grab other information from systems such as AR and layer that over and inject that into the AD object that we create. Because at the end of the day, yes, the Active Directory component is only a part of it, but it is IT's representation of that user, which in terms of their access is what we're trying to achieve, and the computers and the objects that they interact with, i.e. the printers, the computers, the files, all those other things that constitute a user's everyday life. So file and folder access, really nice and easy from an Active Directory group. But what's really important here is that it's the proper creation. This is what I wanted to show you in the demo, and unfortunately I can't, is that by creating templates, I've seen the most successful new starter implementations always where the organizations have got their AD as aligned as much as they can, because obviously environmental factors will sometimes prevent that from happening, whether those are political, physical, whatever. But where we can templatize our new starters, where we can templatize roles, so proper role-based, I mean, to go into the ITIL model, it does actually make sense. ITIL is sometimes alphabet soup, which I'm sure everybody will agree with. But when we're talking about role-based access, if we can put that logic to a certain degree and at least baseline each of the environments or departments. So I used to work for public sector, which I'm sure a lot of you guys are as well, and it was very much about dealing with almost 6 or 7 different types of businesses under one roof. So we're talking, the chief executives is very, very different set of requirements to that of your museum users. So but if we can baseline that role, file and folder access and distribution lists down to a simple set of AD groups, and then put that information into a template, then we can use that as a basis going forward. So email account creation, again, that's possibly one of the easiest things to specifically do. I often use that actually as an example on the knowledge training that we do, and we cover it in about an hour and a half. What the difficulty is actually defining the process. What do we define? How big do we make the mailboxes? Again, so long as we can map that process out in a flow from top to bottom before we even start looking at implementing anything from a technical point of view, we are absolutely bound for success rather than doomed for failure if we just try to almost shoot from the hip and make the process up as we go along when we're defining it, certainly within Service Manager. Distribution group access, exactly the same, and even our line of business applications, a really good strategy for those is to try and start carving them up and categorize them across them. So do they need a thick client? Are they accessed via the web? Can we have we got any Active Directory representation with them, i.e. if we put someone into a group, does it give them access? What software do they need? Hardware requests. Hardware requests, ironically, are slightly more interesting because they are their own request. And so potentially in another webinar at some point, I'm actually going to drill down into that and hopefully show a really good way of actually correlating all of these requests together. And we're not limited, if we use Orchestrator, to just Service Manager. For instance, currently involved in a project where we're looking to use HP Service Manager as the IT management tool. And that's how versatile the System Center suite is. It's a suite. It's modular, i.e. you don't need to use all of it. just like ITIL, it's a framework which you use to manage your enterprise environment. Therefore, you can pick and choose and mix between. And so whether you're using Azure automation, SMA, or even Orchestrator for your automation choice of point of choice, or even a good old PowerShell script that's sitting on a monitored server, it doesn't really matter. What the key to System Center is being able to manage that effectively and consistently. Okay, so hopefully you guys now should be seeing movers with a beautiful transition on there, nice and slow. That's not just the lag on the internet. So once we've defined the new starters process, from top to bottom, we've already started to map out the movers process. So we've got the templatized, hopefully the templatized role-based access. We've got clear definition of managers and roles and file and folder access. And so when we know we're going from and to, that was actually going to be the demo, which we'll try and record and put online within the next few days. So then very much from a moving position, we then have a to and a from position. And so we then, it's a simple tick box exercise after that. We need to then remove or put additional file and resources access, mailboxes, distribution lists, lines of business, hardware assets, etc., etc., etc. Ironically, the line item doesn't actually matter. What the main important thing is that we've got a process for it. And sometimes it doesn't even matter if that process works. So long as there is a process, then it can be followed, maintained, and improved. And it's the one thing I remember taking out of ITIL right from the start. If none of the alphabet soup made any sense to me at that point, about 4 or 5 years when I was first exposed to it, was that the continual service improvement. And so where the idea, we never do something, leave it, and then just hope it works, and then revisit it in 5 years and say, oh, well, Bob did that. He's not here anymore. Well, what do we do? Or we go and buy something else and new and shiny. The whole idea is that we currently revisit all our workings. We look and make sure that we've got all these processes documented. So in the case of adversity and the original implementers of the solution aren't there, someone else can pick up and move on. As I said earlier as well, once we have the new starters and the movers process mapped out, the levers is then almost just a reversal of that position, where the whole idea then is that then we're reversing it. So mostly importantly as well is that we're actually releasing software license, we're releasing hardware back into it, so we're not going and purchasing it. We're not having laptops sitting in cupboards for 3 or 4 months and then coming back onto the network and being out of service, etc., etc. So, and what you can do, I mean, natively Service Manager doesn't give you asset management. It provides the framework though for it, and there are some superb offerings from different third parties. Provence being namely one. They are an asset management solution, and their products are very robust and they are enterprise grade. We also have the marvelous Sirison as well, or Sirison, depending on what side of the states you sit on, which provide a very rounded solution to the to Service Manager and Orchestrator, and some of the other solutions as well. Namely, they're just bringing out a configuration manager portal as well. So these third-party solutions sit on top and enrich the solution as far as they can. But I think what the main thing to do is also perspective. Is when you are attacking solution of these problems around new starters, don't just focus on new starters. You've got to look at new starters, movers, and levers together, because without one, the other two just simply don't work because the information's already out of date. And that's one of the major problems that we have as IT organizations, is sometimes that ever-widening gulf between IT's perspective of the organization, the users, the computers, and the services that it provides and is paid to provide to the business, and that of the actual business in itself. And so it's really important then to improve the relationship between the HR and the financial pillars of those organizations with IT. Get them talking together, get one version of the truth in terms of its organization and the users and computers in it, and you are going to have much more success. So just to round off here, we've got this importance of self-service. I learned a term back a few years now, as I'm sure some of you have potentially heard it as well. It was by one of the chief executives that came in to manage us in Norfolk, and he used the term shift left. And it's an interesting idea. So it's this idea of enabling and moving services ever towards the end user, so allowing and freeing up the resources of your very highly paid staff to do what they're designed to do. And this is underpinned by the idea of this automation. So we automate whatever we can to free up the resources of all our employees at whatever level that they are employed and whatever jobs they are employed to do. So if we can push as much back to the end user as possible, not only does it mean that your staff and yourselves have much more time to do the important tasks, the more interesting tasks, whatever which way you look to feel at it, but it also has the benefit of empowering your end users. We are in an age at the moment with mobile phones that we can download applications to in a matter of seconds, and I think the appreciation with the IT departments that people spend their life in work and requesting IT is sometimes much slower, and it's certainly not as dynamic as the iTunes Store or Google Play, whatever your flavor of mobile provider is. And people are now used to consuming things without having to necessarily ring up and log a physical ticket, though. And Service Manager provides you that. Thank the gods we're away from the hideous SharePoint representation of a self-service portal that we used to have. That was banished to possibly the relics of hell in 2012. UR8 gave us the brand shiny new HTML representation, and we've also got other players such as ITNetX and Saracen who do absolutely beautiful versions of it, which just give you lots more functionality, but the principle is the same. The user is able to log on, they can consume whatever services that you choose to send out to them. So if you want your new starters, movers and leavers only resigned to your HR department, then that's not a problem. And whatever you define within Service Manager is simply echoed out to whatever version of self-service portal that you choose. And the other massive implementation of a self-service portal is to provide one center of truth for your users. So your HR department only have one place to go to. If you've got knowledge base within the environment, grand. Use your existing SharePoint. Use the knowledge base within Service Manager to actually key those to certain categories that you can control and edit and enrich as well. So I think that's probably that's my SLAM demo now, which has come up for there. So what I've tried to do is talk a little bit more around the actual processes, because we're not able to physically show you them this afternoon. But what I'm going to do now is open the floor up to any questions. Right, we've got a question from Jamie Milburn. What HR systems does Service Manager integrate with? Thank you, Jamie. Good question. Service Manager doesn't natively integrate with any particular HR systems. That functionality is provided by Orchestrator. So Orchestrator was formerly Opalus. I think it was at version 6.3 when Microsoft bought it and packaged it and brought it into the System Center suite, and then rebranded it, I think, from the 2012 viewpoint onwards. As I say, marvelous little product, and what it does, as I say, is like BizTalk, but for connecting other sessions. So if you've got a web API or an SDK that you can interact with, it allows you to, first of all, if the vendor has produced a what they call integration pack for Orchestrator or Opalis to work with their product, then the first choice is to use that because it's their developers have provided it. If that's not available to us, we can use WMI, we can use PowerShell, we can use JavaScript to interact with systems. We can also use REST APIs, which is probably the most straightforward way of doing it, and possibly the most more rich experience from it. So really, we can also provide direct SQL queries as well. So hook straight into databases and pull out information. So if there are skills within the house, then that is certainly possible as well. So to answer your question, what HR systems does Service Manager integrate with? I'm going to be really bold. All of them. It's just a matter of time and development. So I'm probably going to regret that at some point. But really good question. Thank you, Jamie. I've just had an updated answer, so I'm going to redact that. Can we edit this out? So none and all. Are there any other questions there? Thank you, Jamie. That was a really good question. No, I think we're probably then right. Okay, so so yeah, next steps basically. So this is the second of our webinar events. So we've learned quite a lot from a technical perspective. It's not to try to do this in a hotel room, unfortunately. Well, not a hotel room. That sounds really high tech, doesn't it? We're in a conference room in a hotel, but unfortunately that has virtually no internet. We've tried all the tricks, but unfortunately it's not there. So yeah, if you want to discuss what's available for or potentially there for your business, then please just get in touch. So you can see our main website, which is http://poweronplatforms.com. What's the marketing? info@poweronplatforms.com. We are on Twitter and Facebook as well. And LinkedIn as well. So I have my marketing manager here, right? Thank you. Yeah, we've had quite a few technical issues getting here today, but it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. Me talking to you guys. I'm sure it hasn't been a pleasure you having to listen to me drone on for 40 minutes. So thank you very much for bearing with us for our technical difficulties, and please get in touch with us if you would like to have any other information following on from this, or any other IT related inquiries. Many thanks for your time. Bye now.